So in today's short video, I want to take a chance to take a look at what Alteryx can do to help you solve complex problems. Uh, Part of being a business analyst is having to manipulate the application data so that it matches your needs and not the application needs. And that can be a lot of work, especially if you rely upon SQL statements and rely upon the formulas and within Alteryx to do the conversions for yourself. It can be a bit tough. So I ran into this little problem looking at the Alteryx community's website, and I expanded upon the business user's question and expanded upon the sample solution that was presented to that business analyst so that we can look at a couple of things. One is how to make data work for you rather than you working for the data. What that means is rather than having to do things manually, if you can build some little data sets that will help you do some data migrations and data manipulations, it makes your job a little bit easier, especially within Alteryx. And second of all, if you find the right Alteryx widget, it makes your job a whole lot easier than trying to always just use those 5 or 6 that you're very comfortable with. And so let's take a look at what we're talking about here within this little set. And that is where within Daisy Hill, they had a course catalog that they had on their website so that users or trainers or puppies, people could sign up for the different training classes to get tricks learned by their puppies. And it looks like any other schedule that you have, and it happens to be the trick and the trainer, when that class is going to be available, the time of the day that it is, as well as the scheduling. And if you're used to any kind of classes, you have classes that are every day of the week. You have some that are Tuesday, Thursdays, Monday, Wednesday, Fridays. I threw in a Friday, Saturday in here just to switch it up a little bit. And this is great and wonderful for someone that's signing up for the class, but it's not so wonderful for if you're doing reporting, or in just this simple case, if you're actually trying to generate a daily schedule for what's going on as far as the training is concerned. So what we want to see is that on this day, these are the classes that are being taught, and who's teaching them, what time they're teaching them. And so we have to extrapolate out from this beginning and end into, along with the Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and actually get which days of the month they're going to be doing that training class. Again, very simple data to maintain in the application. A bit tougher to get this data out to do reporting. And this is good because then you want to do things like track attendance and the value people had, what the income associated with that is, etc. And so let's take a look at how we can utilize Alteryx to do some of this work for you. So here are my 2 data sets. Here's my course catalog. This is the data as it comes in. Let's go ahead and run this real quick so we populate the data through. There we go. And this is a very simple set of classes that have been scheduled, or training sessions have been scheduled, and with our trainers Bob and Joe, etc. And then we also take a look at something that's going to help us work with this data, and that is where we want to be able to translate this Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday, etc. into something that makes our life easier. We need to break this out and say this class is actually scheduled on Mondays and Wednesdays and Fridays and Tuesdays and Thursdays. So if you look ahead a little bit, you realize that if this data was stored a little bit better, it makes our ability to split it out even easier. And so to do that, what we wanted to do is go ahead and create a quick little lookup table that will help us do that with. And that is where here is the codes that people use for the days, and this is the code with a separator, so we can separate that out and utilize it. And then since we want to translate into the day of the week, we'll go ahead and give it the day number, specifically associating that day number with Alteryx functionality. And that is where Alteryx says Sunday is 0 and Saturday is a 6. So this makes it a little bit easier for us to go through this process without having to do a bunch of formulations and get ourselves a little bit carried away in the nightmare. So you may say, well, what is that simple thing that we're going to do with this? Well, very easily, some people overlook some of the widgets that you're not so comfortable with. Once talked to the Alteryx people, they said that, people spend 80% of their time or 90% of their time in this set of widgets that are in the favorites, and they don't branch out very often. And it's that branching out that'll find things. So there happens to be a find and replace widget in here that has a lot of functionality associated with it. If you're trying to look at what you need to get done with it, it will probably do a lot of that for you. In this case, it actually makes this process a little bit easier. So what we want to do is look for any part of the field in the schedule code is going to match with the day code. We're going to make it case insensitive, so we don't have to worry about whether or not it's a capital T little u or capital T capital U. And we're going to replace the text found into the text that was already there. The nice thing here is we can actually say replace multiple found items. So this way it will find if it's a Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, it will match both the Monday, Wednesday, and Friday characters. And I think that's pretty great because we don't have to worry about splitting it out manually using some of the formulas such as regetics, etc. And so it's pretty easy to run. So we've done that just clicking it in there. It has default assumed what we wanted it to do, which is really great. And you see that if we click on the output, now this Monday, Wednesday, Friday has gone to Monday, Wednesday, and Friday with a separator. This is great because this will let us figure out how to match this up with days of the week, but we also have to go ahead and make all of the days of the week associated within the start date and end date. And again, if you can do many different things to try to generate this. SQL you can do it, but it's a bit tough. Alteryx has a widget. We've talked about this one in the past. It's another way of looking at the generate rows. So what we want to do is to create a record, and what we'll be doing is creating a record for every day between the start day and the end date, and then check whether or not it's one of the days within the schedule. So this configuration takes a little bit of work to get it done properly. You'll get used to playing with this, but we want to figure out what we want to start with. We're going to create a new field. In this case, our field is going to be called calendar date. Calendar. Get my fingers in the right place. And it obviously is going to be a date field. The first value we want to give it, so we're going to be generating records for everything between the ranges of the beginning date and ending date. So we're going to click on the ellipsis. It'll show us the values that are there. We just happen to have start date. So we double click on start date, puts it in down here. So the very first record that we create is going to have the value of start date. How do we want to increment every record? So how do we go from record 1 to record 2? What we want to do, and that is down here, I always come into the third one, because I think about incrementing before I think about ending. So what I want to do here is simply each record that I generate is going to be a additional day added to the previous record. So I want to do date time add. It's good to know these functions. You can look them up in here as well, but you get used to some of these. And again, this is going to be our new value, which is called calendar date. So every record that we read, we're going to add 1 to calendar date, and that's going to be 1 day. So as we generate records, we will go and start at the start date, add 1 day to what we've calculated, and then we have a condition where when do we want to stop creating records, or why do we want to actually look at this as saying, do we want to continue in this loop if this condition is true? This is sort of a while loop. So while this condition is true, we're going to continue to work, and that happens to be that we're going to continue to generate records as long as the calendar date is less than or equal to the end date. So when we run this, we go ahead and see that our 11 records has been blown out into 682 records, which is one record for any day within our range. So we can see that, for example, Play Dead by Bob at 9 o'clock in the morning is going to have a candidate for every day within the 2-month range. So now what we want to do is go ahead and calculate which day of the week this is. Now, part of this, you can also do this without doing the calculating the formula. You could actually do the testing within the filter, but I always like to create the value so that I can test that it actually works and I can move forward. So we want to go ahead and create the day of the week for each of these calendar days. That'll help us determine what it is, whether we want to keep it within our schedule. So we're going to go ahead and add a column, and we're going to call that column day of week number. It happens to be down here, make an integer 16, doesn't need to be too big. And all we're going to do is create the function, which is date time format. What this does is extracts data from a date that you in the format or structure that it wanted to be. So the calendar date that we're looking at, if we give it the %lowercase w, it'll give us the day of the week from 0 to 6. The only caution here is that when it does this function, it gives you a text back. So we have to also make sure that we go ahead and convert this string to a number with the to number function. And in its default formatting, it's just simply to number with no additional parameters. It'll give us the number because we've defined it as a integer. It'll do the integer conversion for us. So what this will do is go ahead and show us which day of the week each of these days that we've calculated as candidates. So here we see that we have the incremented or the moving forward of the days or weeks associated with that calendar date. So what we want to do now is all of our candidate records, we want to go ahead and on any day, we want to check whether or not it's a Monday, Wednesday, or Friday. So we again can create a sophisticated formula to do that with, but we really don't need to go to that length. We have another tool inside of Alteryx, which is the text to columns. And what we want to do here is to create rows rather than columns. Again, we're going to be creating a lot of data throughout this process and then simply keep the candidates. Don't worry about this because it's very efficient. It's creating these records as it goes through there and then discarding them when they don't need them because Alteryx does not store up your data. It simply processes off of it. So what we want to do here is simply split the column, which is called the schedule code. The delimiter that we created was a slash, and we're going to split it to rows. Running this quickly, we see that we now have multiple records. There we go. We have multiple records for each of these candidates. So on the first, we have a candidate that this class is taught on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So we now have these 3 records. We got to figure out whether or not this date is either a Monday, Wednesday, or Friday, or none of those. Again, this logic becomes very quickly to do because we have that information over here as to what a Monday is. Don't have to do further translations. All we need to do now is simply to join our data with our lookup table. Again, trying to get Alteryx to do the work for us so we don't have to create sophisticated formulas. And all we want to do here is go ahead and join the schedule code because now it's just a single day with the day code. Looking at what's going to come out here, obviously we don't need all of these variables coming out. We do not need the day code. We don't need a day code separator. All that we want to get out of this is the day number, which is right here. Again, another quick run of this. We see that in the middle is that we now have that Friday is a 5, but this day of the week is a 3. So this record here is not one we want to move forward into our daily schedule, but we do want to keep this record, which is this class is indeed taught on a Friday. This is a Friday, so we want to keep this date for this training session. We do that very quickly with our filter. Finally, we get to the filter. Drop our filter in here. And again, the Alteryx basic filter is very, very short and simple. It'd be nice if it gave us a little bit more power in it, but I always start out before I create a complex filter. I like to go ahead and get the basics. So if the day of the week is equal to, and again, only thing that we can put in here is an actual value. So it's easier to come into the custom filter. And we know we want to compare that to the day number. So if the day of the week is equal to the day number for that record, we want to keep it. Otherwise, we want to reject it. We'll put a select on here so we can clean up the data, but we'll also go ahead and run it, see what it looks like. And now you can see that for the Fridays, it only matches up the actual calendars that are Fridays. So we know that that class is taught on the Fridays. And then further down here, we have some Mondays, etc. So we can see that just the days that we want to keep for its specific class are going to be moving forward. So since what we want here is the calendar date as the leading edge of our data set, then we're going to give the trick name, the trainer name, the start date we do not need, and the end date we do not need. We do need the class time. We do not need the schedule code, day of the week, or the day of week number. So it just gives us a very simple piece of information that we need. Also be nice to go ahead and move the calendar, the time after the calendar date, so it shows date time. Take a quick run through here. You can see now we have the date, the class time, the trick name, and the trainer. Just so that we can see how the data looks and are familiar or comfortable with it, we'll go ahead and drop a sort on the end of it. So we want to sort it by calendar date, class time, trick name, and just in case we have two going on at the same time, we'll go ahead with the trainer name. Then I can now store this data into my database somewhere, or for the purposes of this simple exercise, we'll just put a browse on there so we take a look at what it's doing. And you can see that here is our data set. So on December 1st, we have a couple of classes going on. We have a rollover class, a play dead class, a spin class, and the baking class. The next day we have a few different classes. As we move forward, this becomes a very nice little calendar that we can use and publish and do other work with as far as following through and joining this to any attendance data and tables that we need. So just in summary, what we did here was very minimal amount of typing and formulation. We didn't go to any extraneous methods to gather lots and lots of data together, but we had just enough data so that data could help us with our data migrations and conversions and translations. And it shows that no matter what format you get your data in, you need to look better for reporting purposes. You can get that translation through just a few widgets in just a very short period of time with Alteryx. As always, go ahead and subscribe to the channel so you can get notification of the new class, the new videos as I create them. If you have any comments, please drop them down below. Any additional questions or things you'd like to see as a follow-up, let me know about that as well. And I will continue to try to support you as you go through your endeavors with Alteryx. Thanks for watching.